welcome once again. As the poet laureate out of Jamaica once said, "You think I was finished, but I'm still here." Loosely interpreted, you think me done, but just a come. Admiral Bailey said, yes, sir. So we are here again with the illustrious Justice Roy Anderson. And I just want to take a moment, and it seems as if I'm going to have to restructure the show at some point in time to make these acknowledgements. But I want to just acknowledge wanting to pay condolences and sympathies to an original centralist, Ludlow Easy, affectionately called Lodi, from across the street from here, 6 French Avenue. Yeah, the big yard, Mr. Easy, Miss Easy, Miss Mama, Manga, Wee, Lodi, Leroy, Miss Mary up front who to sell a market, Bevan, Betty, and the never-ending Miss Lou, always in a couscous and so forth. But the vibe in the yard was always a good vibe, enough energy. And Lodi today lost his wife of 30 years. So we just want to extend our condolences. I'm just hoping that we can figure out a way how we can extend courtesies and good positive vibes to our friends and family long before they die. Not wanting to take away from any accolades they might have achieved in their communities, any orders of merit or orders of distinction, but somehow try to figure out a way how we can praise them in a little setting, our family and our friends, long before we have to give them roses when they can't appreciate it. We like to give them roses when they can see it and smell it and appreciate it. So again, Lodi, from all of us in the Port Antonio, Portland family, we just want to extend our sympathies and our condolences to you and your family in this time of bereavement. Yeah, so a big part of what we talk about in this little show, this little podcast, is the fact that growing up in small town Jamaica, the influences that it has had on our world, influence that it has had on our personality, whether it's from infant school right through primary and secondary school and tertiary education, and just living, working, observing what's out there, we must acknowledge that the shape, the foundation that was set for us, molded us in one way or the other. Remember now, not everybody became a lawyer, a doctor, an Indian chief. For the most part, we're just ordinary, simple citizens of the world who went out and charted their own courses. And here we have, again, the Honorable Justice Roy Anderson. And he'll be with us for a couple of weeks because he's going to be our storyteller, our fact checker, our erudite academic, who's going to bring some things different to the table, a different perspective. And remember that we're going to build this show on the premise that our area, how it has influenced our culture, how it has influenced our lives, our politics, our living. We're going to bring a lot of that to the table. So we're going to be bringing musicians, we're going to be bringing dancers, we're going to be bringing poets, storytellers, and just ordinary kinfolk from within the community. So having said that, Honorable Justice Roy Anderson, sir.
Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question for you.
Okay.
All right? Simply put, what are your abiding memories of Port Antonio growing up as a child from infancy to the end of your secondary education? And the second part, so you can meld the both parts in. Okay. They're part and parcel of the same experience. How do you feel this has influenced who you are and how you relate to those with whom you come into contact?
Excellent questions. I'm just so thrilled to be able to have this time of reflection. As you said, we're not talking about the good old days. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about where we were planted or where we found ourselves planted, and what did we find where we were planted, and how has that influenced us. My memories of growing up in Port Antonio firstly on French Avenue, so my condolences to Ludlow as well. I was a French Avenue person, really right beside the Cunninghams. I think they still live around there.
Yes.
Between the Cunninghams and the Saunders on the other side.
Yes.
I used to live in that close.
Yes.
And then that's where we lived before we moved to Harbour Street.
Okay.
My abiding memory is of a sense of community. One of the things that every time I think of Portland, growing up, I think of the Portland Festival of Music, Arts, and Drama, which existed before we had a Jamaican festival. Where every year the schools from the area, from Portland, Jonathan, Marcus Bay, Hope Bay, Buff Bay, Mansion Hill, Fruitfulville, and so on, Fair Prospect, came to Port Antonio over 2 weekends to perform elocution, singing, dancing, and so. Fantastic. But out of that, I think the feeling I got out of that was this sense of community. And I give you a quick example. I was at a funeral the other day of a schoolmate of mine. Some of you may know him, a guy named Mibsy Curry. And one of Mibsy's cousins is a guy named Victor Nugent. I had an elocution contest with Victor every year for about 4 years as a young 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old in Portland. Hadn't seen him since I went to high school. Yeah, I think he went to Africa, but I just never saw him. So approximately 70 years later, I ran into him at Mibsy's funeral. And it was like, wow, we're just seeing each other the day before. Because of the sense of community, the sense of feeling that you belong to something which is greater than yourself, is just yourself. And it didn't matter who they were, whether it was Phantom, who went to jail every so as the football season was out, or Putt, or Dean was always in the jail. Every few weeks, I'm gone for 7 days, or somebody else. You had this sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of feeling that if you were in a problem, you didn't have to look very far because somebody nearby.
Yeah, man. Somebody knew you who knew two or 3 degrees of separation, as they would say.
Absolutely. Yes, So it's that sense of community, I think, which is my abiding memory, and knowing all those people who, as I say, not all we didn't all go to Titchfield.
Yes.
But we all grew up in Port Antonio. I mean, people like the late lamented guy named Striker. Few of you would probably remember Striker, who was shot and killed by a certain gentleman in a store down William Street. Things like that really resonate with me. Those people, the Pots who played football with us, the Phantoms, those guys who were just part of the scene and part of the community.
Yes.
So it's the sense of community, I think, which is my abiding memory of growing up in a small town. Town of Portland.
So how was that? So once you went through your period of your growth, secondary education, and so on, and you came back into the working space, how do you think that has influenced the way you have, the people you have come in contact with? Because you have been in a situation where you have been able to make judgment calls on situations that arise before you. So how do you think your growth, your early development, in fact, influenced the way you saw people in general? Whether it was from a question of class or a question of...
This I think was what I think shaped me to be who I am. It is a sense that we are all worth something.
Yes.
We all bring something to the table. Some might be academics, some might be lawyers, some might be doctors, some might be carpenters, some might sweep the streets. I remember as a young man growing up in first, there was one Rasta man who was called Ras.
Yeah.
Kind of Edwards from out by Folly Road there. And then later on, as I got older, there was a second Rasta man who came, was called TB, a guy named McPherson.
Yes.
So, and I could stay at my house at Harbour Street and hear TB up by almost by
come down with a big flag, yes. We used to call him Alaja.
Exactly.
Yes.
My mother was like, Allah Jasila, Night Aminga.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are the guys who I grew up looking at.
Right.
But recognizing that there that I was just a part of the community.
Yes.
And therefore it behooved me as Miss Andy, third son,
Right.
to just treat people with respect and discipline.
Yes.
To recognize that just like I know when Paca or Hugh was passing my yard, they must say hi to Miss Andy.
Yes.
I know when I saw Mrs. Perry, I have to say hi to her too.
Yes.
Because
exactly.
Otherwise, and so that idea of the importance of the person, of being,
yes,
is something that has informed the way I look at things. And when I went to study law and came back and went to the bench, it was something that I took very seriously. Recognizing people for their inherent dignity.
Yes, yes, sir.
No matter where they came from.
Yes,
and so that's critical for me. And it's something that has informed the way that I relate to people, whether it's my helper, the man, even nowadays, guys who the squeegee guys at the windscreen, at the traffic light, a lot of people get very annoyed with them. But I try my best, not all the time successfully, but try my best to say, "Here, brethren, boy, so that I have now still $50 a year or so, but to treat them with respect." And I find that even if you don't have anything to give them, if you treat them with some dignity, they treat you with the same dignity.
So in essence, it transcends generations in actuality, because my experience is that the same set of people who never went to infant school, they never went to primary school, they never went to teach field, they never went to bumble school, they never went to any kind of school, they never went to free school, they never went to Sunday school. The same kind of people you talk about them when they come out to the soccer field. You remember the characters.
Of course.
There was this one guy I remember. He would always be going to jail, right? And when you walk past the police station, remember how the jailhouse used to set up, wherein they could have looked under the bar at the bottom at the floor level. Correct. And they would always a shout out, "Oh, Mr. P, you don't have my mother to send bail money for me or what?" But when him come out next week and you see him, you know him and him know you. And when them walking across from police station to courthouse and and circuit court there or whatever, you know them. But it's not the kind of criminality where it's bad word cussing, it's little shoplifting and so on and so forth. No, major criminality. Some man just one time. But anyway, that is a discussion for another time. So our experience is somewhat similar, because at the end of the day, while we come from a completely different generation, there was a kind of morphing of the way the community was structured. Absolutely. So our experience was similar in many ways. And for that,
if you'll allow me very quickly, Paul, just one quick. I mean, because as I say, I'm fortunate enough to have lived to this age, where I can look back. A lot of people don't realize that where we call Bonneville Hill or Old Churchill was because that's where the parish church used to be. And I started going to infant school just after the famous 1944 hurricane, at a time when everybody was still using slate, them infant school.
Yes.
Many of us who couldn't afford the slate, or once the slate broke, your mother couldn't buy another one till the end of the term, would go to the side of what is now Christ Church, because the hurricane of 44 had blown off the slate roof of the roofing. And we'd pick up huge piece of slate, 8 inches by 8 inches, 10 inches by 8 inches, and another piece of slate to use as a pencil. And that is what we take to school. Yes. Many of us, that's what we did.
Yes.
So it's amazing. And nobody ever looked down on me for that. And no, so why would I look down on somebody else who didn't have education?
I mean, we knew the people in our community who were that much more fortunate than us, and we knew the idea of dressing up on a Sunday evening and walking up Titchfield Hill and dreaming about having that kind of prosperity. And so we understand that. We know the people in the community, whether they were the Chinese who had their shops and so on. We understand all of that. But somehow there was no distinctive line drawn. It was kind of a nuance about how you went about some things. We understand that. but we're going to get into that at somewhere down the road, because we need to talk about the way the hotels were set up and the banks were set up and so on. But we're not going to discuss it in a manner that is kind of overarching and much too serious. We're going to just kind of make mention, because you have some very telling stories about some of those things that I know for sure.
Absolutely.
We kind of just bring out. But one of the important things I want to bring to our audience is the fact that when I say Port Antonio, I am not talking about Port Antonio proper. Because remember now, when people say them come from town, them not really born under the clock or half a tree, you know. Or them not come from Crossroads, you know. Them can't come from all August town, them can't come from out of Patrick City, them can't come from Redlands top, them still say town. So when we say Port Antonio, we are talking from Long Bay, Manchonil, Fairrail, Boston. We are talking Windsor Forest, we are talking Windsor Castle, we are talking Buff Bay and Natta Bay Center, we are talking Bombrook, we are talking all about Baptist Hill, William Street, Smart Road, Mannings Avenue. We are talking all encompassing. So the spirit of small town Jamaica, we want to ensure that people are reminded that what is carved in our DNA about how we relate to people, how we give, how we volunteer, how we share, how we love, because today is quote unquote a day that is being celebrated as a day of love. However you want to define love, whether it's romantic love or it's esoteric, it's just in your brain about how you connect with stuff and people and so on. Love in its essence is always a positive energy, even though you can use the word love in a manner that it overarches something that you really don't want people to understand that it's love, because you might say, I love to hate, or I love to overeat, or I love to drink too much white rum. But love in its essence is about how we understood our community, our friends, our family, and how we relate to them, how we gave, how we shared, how we showed empathy. How people would go to funerals, even when them don't know this somebody, even when them come from Bombrook and them come from Crossroads, but you hear say, Mr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
Everybody go to a funeral. Everybody there night. And it's not like night like no, when man compete with big band for play music, you know, brother. It's just fried fish and chocolate tea and maybe little music, but no whole heap of music till 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
And some peg bread.
Take a load of board and so. But the point I'm making is that the essence of this program moving forward is to expose to the general viewing public. And we hope that it's shared, and at some point in time, we figure out how we can make a subscription so that we can share back in the community and give back as much as we get.
Absolutely.
Because even though today is a day of Valentine's, they call it Valentine's Day, we are shaped in our essence by the love and compassion, small town. Everybody know everybody. When my mother dragged me down Harbour Street to go Methodist Church, and me a ball like a banshee, everybody knows a Paca Perry. I forgot church Sunday morning. Me I forgot market Saturday morning with my mother. And I forgot church Sunday morning with my mother. I remember that Mr. Marshall like office, I help her with her little office work. But everybody know everybody.
Absolutely.
Yes. So no matter where you come from, So in essence, we want to move on, and you'll be with us for a couple more segments.
Looking forward to it.
And I would like for you to share with us in our next go around some of the experiences that not just shaped your life, but kind of just opened your eyes to some of the things that Port Antonio reflected in the general populace of Jamaica. Yes.
Okay, well, and I have a great story to tell you about that, and a story that I didn't even understand the implications of what was done until I left Port Antonio and became almost an adult. So it's an interesting story that I have shared.
Yes, indeed. And for that, sir, once again, your erudite display of some of our historical references. We cannot. At some point in time, I'm hoping that somebody who have great writing skills can, outside of you being a good orator, we're hoping that somebody with good writing skills can document some of these stories that we're telling.
Absolutely.
Down the road. Because one of the interesting things I must point out, for example, like when I reference Lodi, when when I was a child, I thought I was that much older than Lodi. And I'm only 4 or 5 years older than some of these guys who you thought you were much older than. And as you get older, you come to feel like, wow, did you stop getting old and they got older, or is just the fact that you were not that much older than them in the beginning?
In the first place.
And so you're pretty much on the same page. You're pretty much on the same thought. Your lives are influenced in the same general way. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So once again, sir, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm gonna just end with a quick reference to what Martin Luther King said in reference to what love is really. And he said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. These are the words of Martin Luther King Jr. So in essence, whoever you celebrate today, whether it's a pagan holiday, it's a Christian holiday, it's a Buddhist holiday, whatever it is, to any one of our audience members, just embrace the fact that love in its essence is a positive energy. And we must, as we go through, embrace that which is positive. Because regardless of how cloudy it might seem, the sun will always rise. And love will always rise to the top. Indeed.
Thank you for having me, Paul. And I must just share quickly with you that I just came off a program, a retired Caribbean community retired persons program celebrating Valentine's Day, where I sang a song called Perhaps Love. So next time I'll probably sing a few bars of it for you.
No, man, as a matter of fact, close the show with us a few bars, please, sir. Thank you.
You really want to hear that?
Yes, sir, just a few bars. Just give me a couple of lines of it.
Perhaps love is like the ocean, full of conflict, full of change, like a fire when it's cold outside, or my thunder when it rains. If I should live forever and all my dreams come true, my memories of love will be of you. My memories of love will be of you.
Stand up. Yes, sir. All right, so have a good evening and all the best.
You too, Paul. Okay.
Yes, man. To you and your family. Take care.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, tune in on Primal 4K for this talk show / podcast. And as we move forward, I beg you embrace, share, and figure out a way how we can just keep the vibe alive as we go through to share our experiences about growing up in small town Jamaica. Take care and thank you. As I always say, walk good.
Okay, bless you.